Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Valerie Newhart with the Office of Trade Relations, and we have a treat for you. Our next session will focus on the valuable Ctpat information, and we are thrilled to bring to you a panel of CBP experts. I am pleased to introduce your moderator. Oh, and I will also share they're going to take questions after the session, so that might be even more exciting. So your moderator for today is our director of the Miami Ctpat Field Officer, Pete Toohey.
Thank you, Deputy Executive Director Newhart, and a warm virtual welcome and good afternoon to everybody. Hope everyone's doing well given the current pandemic. Before we get started, I want to point out that there's a few icons at the bottom of your screen, one of which is a resources icon. Tapping on that will lead you to a downloadable PowerPoint presentation. This can also be found on the Trade Week webpage on cbp.gov. You will also find a closed caption icon at the bottom of your screen that is active for today's session. Last, please note that using the Q&A function, you are able to submit questions throughout the session, and we will work to answer as many questions as we can before the end of the session. My name is Pete Toohey. I'm the director of the Miami Ctpat Field Office, and I'm proud to say that I've been a part of the Ctpat program for over 15 years now. 13 of those as a supply chain security specialist in the field, and the last 2 years as the Miami director, and working in close cooperation with headquarters on today's panel topics. You're here today because you're part of the Ctpat family, and you're eager to hear the latest and greatest from the Ctpat program, which, like your business, strives to stay on the cutting edge and to evolve with an ever-changing threat environment. Or maybe you're looking to join and simply want to know more. Either way, you've come to the right place. Assembled here today and led by Ctpat Director Manuel Garza is a panel of subject matter experts on each of their topics. How do I know that? Well, because I work with them daily and I see their efforts, which oftentimes continue late into the night and early the next morning. And weekends are no exception. Today's panel will bring you up to speed on all things Ctpat. First, Director Garza will provide you with a view of the Ctpat program from where he sits, whether that's virtually or otherwise, as the case may be, its current status, his far-reaching initiatives, and priorities going forward in the face of adversity and uncertainty. Carlos Ochoa, our second panelist and headquarters branch chief, charged with overseeing Ctpat's trade engagement and communications branch, will deliver the program's accomplishments and the rollout of the enhanced minimum security criteria and the Ctpat portal's security profile updates, discuss impacts to the program's partners and counterparts at home and abroad, and explain how the program is facilitating and evaluating the MSC's implementation. Buffalo Ctpat Field Office Director Mark Isaacson, most appropriately, given today's online platform and in light of world events, will brief us on Ctpat's virtual validation process, its origins, perceived barriers, ongoing testing, and the expectations for Ctpat's partners and supply chain security specialists as we collaborate to increase workforce agility and business resumption options. Last, but certainly not least, but I'm sure she'll let me know about this later on, Carmen Perez, our trade compliance whiz and headquarters branch chief, will outline what you need to know about the construction and integration of Ctpat's trade compliance program, its timeline progression, and the program's vision moving forward. We'll also hear about the Ctpat program's partnership with the University of Houston for an academic fitness check of sorts to assess and measure program perceptions, efficacy, and to leverage partner collaboration to continue the program's professional growth. Without further delay, I'd like to kick off our panel with everyone's favorite homegrown director, Manuel Garza. Since his appointment as the Ctpat director in late 2018, he was immediately challenged with leading our program through a government shutdown, a humanitarian crisis on the border, and now a global pandemic. No problem, right? An alumnus of the University of Texas, Director Garza began his career 18 years ago as a customs officer and gained experience on both the northern and southern borders, gaining recognition as a manager in the Container Security Initiative's Dominican Republic operations, and later as both the supervisor and branch chief with Ctpat in Washington, D.C. How's that for homegrown? Prior to his current role, he served as the director of the Manifest and Conveyance Security Division and was responsible for the cargo enforcement policies, activities, and security efforts in all modes of transportation. Director Garza, we're glad to have you here today, and personally, I want to send a quick thanks for your leadership and resiliency work during these last 6 months. Can you please tell our audience the latest for the Ctpat program?
Wow, that was a great introduction there, Pete. Thank you very much for that. Val, I'd like to thank you to the Office of the Commissioner for allowing Ctpat to have the platform today. It's it's an unprecedented time that we're in, and I really appreciate the efforts of this trade week. I really like it. And speaking of unprecedented times, to everybody out there who's paying attention and listening, I hope you and your families are doing as best as you can, staying safe and healthy through these times. CBP, our family, we have succumbed to the pandemic. We've lost roughly 10 employees due to the pandemic, and we've had several hundred others who have, who are still recovering from the pandemic. And so just want to make sure that, your families and everybody is staying healthy. And, we really wanted to do a conference. I've had a lot of questions about trying to do a conference, the Ctpat annual conference. But, we had to halt our efforts due to the pandemic for the safety of everybody. We are enjoying this platform. We just did a previous presentation a couple of weeks ago. Although it was all in Spanish, and it was really geared at training on the minimum security criteria. But we had over 2,000 personnel that participated in that event. So, these virtual platforms are really helping industry get out there and be a part of it when normally maybe funding wouldn't allow you to because of travel and et cetera. So what's going on with Ctpat? What are we doing here? Well, we still have about 11,400 members in the program, and we have about 315 trade compliance members. And I will tell you that because of COVID, we have seen an increase in the number of companies that are withdrawing from the program. And one of the things we have implemented as part of this is before we let companies withdraw, we ask questions. We're asking, what's the source behind the withdrawal? What is it? Is it the minimum security criteria that you're unable to accomplish? Or is it financial reasons? Is there changes to the structure of the company? And so we go on and we try to figure that out. And I can tell you that from the 100 plus companies that have withdrawn since January, they pretty much have all told us that due to financial reasons, companies going out of business. Some of them are changing in their habits of how they supply, cargo into the United States. So there's just, none of them are because it's the minimum security criteria that they don't think they can accomplish. And I have spoken directly to several large companies to ask those questions myself. So we still, and even though we have companies withdrawing, they still represent about 53.5% of the total cargo coming into the U.S. by value. So we still represent a very large number of the cargo movements coming into the United States. But I will tell you, even though we have had this pandemic, enforcement is still something that this program has to adhere to. I give as much leniency as I can, but I have to tell you that I've suspended 52 companies this fiscal year, and 14 of them have been suspended since January the 1st. And I think it's important to lay out that those companies, those 14, it's not because of anything they did in 2020. It's all because of things that they didn't do in 2019. So I'd like to just make that very clear that, we've given lots of companies opportunities during the pandemic to, provide the information they needed for their minimum security criteria that was due in 2018, 2019. Companies we've given ample amount of time to get to where they need to be with the validation report and the responses to that. And unfortunately, a lot of companies just haven't been responding. And then we get the responses that say, I'll fill it out, I'll answer in 30 days, and they never do. And then moving on to removal. So when that starts happening, we give companies a big opportunity and a big chance. Suspensions lead to removals, and we've had to remove about 138 companies already this fiscal year. And again, it's for failing to respond to the partner requirements. I don't think there may be only one company right now that I know that I have removed as a result of anything that happened in 2020. But it's clearly a separate and a very small, isolated, number of companies that are doing this. We are in the process of updating our bulletin on suspension, removals, appeals, and the reinstatement process, and I hope to get that out in the coming weeks. We're also going to keep moving forward with the validation processes, and you'll see that coming out later on this year as well. But the most important thing that I really want to stress right now is seizures. And I think the commissioner touched on it yesterday a little bit, and it's really important because it is affecting Ctpat partners. And I really want all of you that are Ctpat members to pay close attention. Narcotic seizures on the southwest border are staggering with meth and fentanyl right now in the commercial environment. We really need the help and assistance of our Ctpat members to do the right thing, train your employees, make sure they know what they're doing. You know, we understand the situation, but you've got to make sure that you're giving us awareness that something's wrong with your cargo shipments. The drivers are worried, concerned. We've got to get that message across. We've got to make sure that your teams are joining forces with CBP and providing that valuable information. The seizures of meth have doubled. We're over 120,000 pounds of meth that we've seized this fiscal year, whereas fiscal year 19 we were at around 60,000, and we're almost at 3,000 pounds of fentanyl. So the numbers are skyrocketing. That's the most meth and the most fentanyl that we've seized on the southwest border, and we really need our members to do their part. No exception on the northern border. We've seen an unprecedented time as well with the number of marijuana seizures happening on the northern border. And we really, and I will say this though, we have had a number of companies that are notifying their supply chain specialists, telling us about certain things that they're finding, you know, with their supply chain. And that's leading to seizures on the border. And we appreciate that. That is exactly how the partnership needs to work. I'm going to touch a little bit about forced labor. If for those of you that were on the previous panel today, the discussion about forced labor was robust. Lots of information out there, lots of things going on from Congress to DHS to all the other agencies that have a role within forced labor. Ctpat, we determined and decided from leadership down that we needed to make sure that forced labor was a part of the new minimum security criteria, and so we included it for right now as a should, but we are still thinking about how we're going to move forward in the coming months or years in making changes to that. Forced labor is something that we don't take very lightly, and we're very excited about moving forward with the current criteria as a should. That companies should have a social compliance policy in place. I think a little bit later, Carmen might interject a little bit about forced labor into the trade compliance arena and how we are moving forward on making requirements for forced labor for companies to have social compliance policies within their programs as they revolve around a social compliance policy for trade compliance members. And we've got the updated minimum security criteria. We've got to make sure that our standards are in place. Even though we are in this unprecedented time where validations have ceased since back in February, what was it, March the 13th, we had to pull the plug on validations because of the pandemic. And here we are now today, looking forward to going on with the virtual validations, and Mark's going to talk to you about the virtual validations. But I think it's critical and it's very important that as we go through this agenda that we have here today, ask your questions. Don't be afraid to ask. During the previous session that we did with the Association of Cluster de Seguridad in Mexico, I think we ended up with like 900 questions. And so not that I need more work, but we are working to answer them. So I do appreciate everybody's efforts with what we're doing. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Pete.
Excellent information, sir. Thank you so much. A reminder for everybody that the Q&A is open now for any questions that you may have. However, we will attempt to answer these questions at the end of the presentations. But the Q&A forum is open for your questions. Also, I want to point out that there are a few icons at the bottom of your screen, one of which is a resources icon. Tapping on that will lead you to a downloadable PowerPoint presentation, also found on the Trade Week webpage on cbp.gov. As I mentioned, you will also find a closed caption icon at the bottom of your screen that's active for today's session. Okay, turning now to our second panelist, Carlos Ochoa, our Trade Engagement and Communications Branch Chief. He's here to provide us with what we need to know about Ctpat's minimum security criteria and the Ctpat portal security profile updates. Mr. Ochoa holds degrees in political science and history, as well as a master's degree in international affairs, and began his career with the U.S. government over 25 years ago with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Mr. Ochoa has extensive management experience with Ctpat and has served in multiple capacities, leading global efforts to expand Ctpat's mutual recognition programs and partnering with the private sector under the auspices of COAC to make the new minimum security criteria a much-needed reality. Branch Chief Ochoa, can you please provide our audience with the latest on your branch's efforts?
Yes, I will, Pete. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. I will be updating you on two issues: where we are in terms of implementation of the new minimum security criteria, what we call the MSC, and the extent to which companies have been able to complete the new security profile in the Ctpat portal. As promised to the trade, we developed a tool called the Msc Performance Tracker, which helps us gather the necessary data to effectively assess members' compliance with the updated MSC. It's an internal tool that basically allows us to identify where partners are facing challenges. The way it works is simple. Soon after the validation is over, and if the company had any actions required or recommendations, the supply chain security specialist completes a form in just a few minutes, and then it is transmitted to a SharePoint-based dashboard. The dashboard then allows us to filter the data by entity type, geographic location, company size, and of course, criteria category and a specific requirement. So far, we've conducted 151 validations, and of those, 136 forms were submitted to the MSC tracker. But the data collected from these validations has actually given us a pretty good idea as to where companies are having some challenges. Once we get back to our regular validation work and we collect more robust data, we will be able to provide you with a specific intel. So this is only an example. It could be something like suppliers located in Southeast Asia continue to generate actions required related to how they control high security seals. And that way you can in turn drive the need for your suppliers in Southeast Asia to fully comply with the Ctpat requirement. The data will also help our specialists to better target future validations so that they may focus a little bit more on those requirements we have already identified as challenging in a specific part of the world. And it will help us in headquarters in the development of training and outreach material. And that's exactly what we did just a few weeks ago when we issued a Ctpat bulletin on the code of conduct. So let's look at the data and the three areas of concern that we identified. The first one is agricultural security, requirement 8.1, which calls for the company to have written procedures designed to prevent visible pest contamination. And the key word here is, of course, visible. No specialized equipment is needed, just a human eye. The second area of concern that we identified via the Msc Performance Tracker was the first security category, security vision and responsibility. This is a new category, obviously, but it's a critical one as it mostly speaks to the executives, the owners of the companies, the directors of security. In other words, the individuals whose responsibility is to lead the company in the right direction. It deals with the company's vision, with management oversight, and for management to get the right person to be the Ctpat company point of contact. Of the four requirements in this category, the one with the most deficiencies was 1.3, which calls for the company to document that it has a review process in place, an audit process in place, a process that outlines management's oversight of its security program. And finally, the third requirement with the greatest number of deficiencies was 5.2, which calls for the Ctpat inspection process to have written procedures for both security and agricultural inspections. So, in looking at these data, overall, I think companies are doing well. You can tell that the main challenges I just identified are all paper-driven, paper-based. The need for companies to have written, documented processes in place. And this is something that companies often just do once, and all they have to do afterwards is to review those processes and update them as they see necessary. We have made sure that the updated MSC was not deployed in a vacuum. A lot of training and outreach resources that should help you implement the updated MSC can be found in the public documents, public library section of the Ctpat portal. I also wanted to share with you the work that we're doing with our international counterparts. We're actually taking 2 concrete actions that will hopefully result in more authorized economic operator programs from around the world adopting Ctpat's updated requirements. So first, we're working with all 12 of our mutual recognition arrangement partners to convince them to adopt the updated MSC so that our programs can once again be compatible. Director Garza reached out to all of his counterparts a few weeks ago to express his wish that they adopt the new MSC, and the responses so far have been positive, meaning that most of them have already replied and that they will be willing to update their own criteria. And we're also working at the WCO, the World Customs Organization level, so that the updated MSC is eventually reflected in the WCO's documents on the Authorized Economic Operator Program. Finally, we continue to engage and provide training to the membership. In fact, we expect to have participated in at least 75 events by the end of this year. As you can see on the slide, 3 weeks ago, approximately, we had a 3-day event on the MSC for our members in Mexico. Approximately 22% of the membership is physically located in Mexico. Conducted completely in Spanish, and close to 2,300 participants registered and participated in the event. We do not expect any more changes to the MSC over the next couple of years, but we will continue to assess implementation, gather the data, share that intel with you, and of course, plan for any needed changes in 2022 and beyond. So let me go over the new security profile. As you know, the new security profile, which reflects the updated MSC, was activated on June 1st. And on that day, we posted detailed instructions on the Ctpat website as to what companies need to do based on when their security profiles are due. To help members update the new security profiles, we uploaded their old security profiles as PDF files in the Partner Document Exchange section. So that's where you need to go if you want to see your old security profile. I know that for a lot of the criteria, it's just a simple cut and paste exercise. Once again, the Partner Document Exchange section. Please keep in mind that the Ctpat anniversary date is used as the security profile due date. And this is all in that message that we posted on the Ctpat website, by the way. So right now, only those companies with anniversary dates between March 1st through today are required to complete the new security profile. This means that if your anniversary date is January 1st to February 28th, your security profile is due between January 1st to February 28th, 2021, next year. If your anniversary date, on the other hand, is November the 1st, then you should really have started the process to update your security profile, but it doesn't have to be completed until November the 1st. So far, 49% of all members have submitted a new security profile. So that's 5,497 members. And of those, 38% have been approved. That's 4,327 profiles that have been approved. 8% have yet to be approved by the supply chain security specialist. So we're talking about 927 security profiles in the process of being approved. So what are the other 51%? As I said before, We still have 4.5 months before February 28th, the date when all companies must have submitted their security profiles. But of course, some companies are late in their submission. That's why one of the things that we're doing, once again, COVID-19 pandemic, unprecedented times, being flexible, we're granting members extensions should they need additional time to complete their new security profile. If a company asks for an extension, we document the request, and based on the member's request, we grant 30, 60, or 90-day extensions. What we're not going to do is grant a blanket extension to all members to complete the security profile. Once again, already half of the members have submitted their new security profiles. As you can see, the role of the Ctpat company point of contact is critical, whether it's in making sure that written processes are documented or the security profile is submitted in a timely manner. That's why one of the things that I'm always emphasizing is that you need to make sure that you have the right person doing this job, and to the extent that it can be done, to be recognized as such by your human resources department. We're making every effort to reach out to those companies whose security profiles are late to determine what the problem may be. The last thing we want to do right now is to suspend a company for their failure to submit a security profile. But at the same time, if your security profile is due and you're having issues, if you have questions, please reach out to your supply chain security specialist. They're at home right now, but they're working, and they're there for you. It's one of your most important benefits as a Ctpat member. So that's what I have so far, Pete, in my 10 minutes, so I will turn it over to you, sir. Thank you.
Excellent timing. Very good information. Very, very much appreciated. Just a reminder that the Q&A chat function is open for any questions to be answered at the end of this panel. I do see some coming in, so thanks for using that. As promised, Buffalo Field Office Director Mark Isaacson is here to provide us with details on Ctpat's exploration into cyberspace and the program's path forward when discussing alternatives to the traditional validation process. Holding a degree in economics and backed by over 25 years with CBP, Mr. Isaacson attained experience and the Commissioner's recognition for his work as a customs officer at JFK's International Airport in New York, which included assisting in the recovery efforts in the immediate aftermath of the September 11th terror attacks on the World Trade Center. Director Isaacson gained foreign operational experience in Montreal, Canada, as a senior officer assigned to CBP's pre-clearance mission. I saw this firsthand, and later applied that foreign experience in his work as both a supply chain security specialist and supervisor for Ctpat. Becoming the field office director for Buffalo in 2018, Mr. Isaacson continues to lead bilateral mutual recognition efforts with Canada and India, and has been recognized for his work with the World Customs Organization. Director Isaacson, can you please provide our audience what they need to know and what they should be looking forward to in Ctpat's virtual world?
Absolutely, Pete. And just before I go any further, just give me a verbal that you can hear me so I can continue.
Sound good. We hear you good.
Okay. Very good. So again, I want to apologize. I can't be as virtual as I can be. I have been informed I've been having bandwidth issues here in my office. It's a shame because I dressed so nice for this, and you know, I really wanted to kind of show that off. But anyway, kudos to the Cisco team to go into Plan B in a pinch and put my still photo up there. It's about 2 years old, so it's good for me because I look a little younger. But again, all you're going to see is a still photo, and again, I do apologize for that. It's you know, always a pleasure to speak with trade members when it comes down to talking about what's going on in the Ctpat program. So good afternoon. I know my time is short, so just let me go into it right away, and let's start off with the slide that you see there. On Friday, March 13th, all scheduled in-person validations were postponed indefinitely. At that time, it became clear that Ctpat needed to identify a new approach to the validation process and the ability to validate members without traveling. So far, Ctpat has conducted a few test cases with members and currently has a few additional virtual validations in the pipeline, which is helping us how we develop our internal policy moving forward. The program is working on finalizing our internal policy this month, along with conducting several more virtual validation tests. We are also tracking data in the virtual validation tests, and we'll be assessing that data to compare the virtual validation process against the in-person validations. Once we finalize our internal policy, the virtual validation process, we will scale that process through training of our SCSSs and, most importantly, providing documentation to our members on the updated process as well. Ctpat is planning to begin executing the virtual validation process at the start of fiscal year 2021. Regarding additional validation updates, validation schedule for 2020, which we are unable to conduct, obviously, will be pushed to 2021. If a company is selected for virtual validation, it will always still be a requirement of membership that they must uphold. However, Ctpat will work with the company to make reasonable accommodations on an as-needed basis. While a final decision is still forthcoming, it is most likely that the 2021 validation cycle will be pushed to 2022. There is a potential, though, for self-certification, though this is still in the discussion phase. Any companies considered for this would be based on their demonstration of being very low risk. Regarding the long-term validation expectations, Ctpat is also exploring options to enhance the validation process in the long term, such as enhancements to the further capability to conduct live facility tours and interviews with a secure tool, automation of the validation process, and advanced analytics on validation data. Regarding security live stream facility tours and member interviews, the enhanced platform for members and SCSSs to conduct live interviews and upload facility tours and additional videos to enhance proof of compliance with the MSC and to reduce reliance on visiting member facilities in person. It's an intelligent automation and virtual validation process. We explore opportunities to automate repeated activities throughout the virtual validation process in order to reduce administrative burden and generate additional time for SCSSs to tailor their assessment to focus further on critical areas of member risk and compliance. A first step in this would be to identify activities to automate and streamline the virtual validation process, such as data and documents for member uploads, pre-validation information, electronic communications and secure data exchange with members, government, and even MRA partners, and as well as automated notifications for validation actions. So that's very important. Regarding the cognitive analytics and anomaly detection for virtual validations, research additional analytic tools that could help Ctpat assess member risk and flag threats based on validation to inform risk-based validation actions and training and map aggregated view of member supply chain risk trends. I also wanted to talk a little about how this process really came about. This was a long, but I want to kind of emphasize it was a responsible process too. We really had to do our homework here. And going back to Carlos's MSC information and to kind of dive deeper into a little bit of it, one thing that you may notice is the cybersecurity angle that we're taking and we're really moving forward with. And the last thing we wanted to do was subject any of our partners to any cyber attacks based on the platform we chose to use. So along with Director Tui and myself, we had to really kind of navigate through this world of virtual platforms and actually see what the government had, for example, CBP or DHS, had in their repertoire to kind of go through and kind of analyze before we dove into this. And we did find out that we have what's called a FedRAMP ability to send information and links and invitation to our partners in a secure, personal, private environment. And what that means is that supply chain security specialists will be able to establish their own private rooms, i.e. private connections, and invite important members or points of contact, subject matter experts to the validation of the virtual validation experience directly. So you'll know that this link is as secure as it can be from a federal point of view. We also want to emphasize that Ctpat will always be a boots on the ground program. That's the methodology of this entire process. We physically go and view supply chains, and that one-on-one basis is unmatched, where supply chain security specialists will visit the facility, and every member who's at that facility at that time during the meeting will gain the knowledge and experience and education about the supply chains that is sorely needed. So this can be looked at as a way of having, let's say, another tool in our toolbox. It's always great to have, especially now, knowing that anything can turn on a dime in this day and age. So it's good to have that in our bag of tricks, but at the same time, we also want to say that our main emphasis moving forward in a pandemic-free environment, obviously, is to always have that boots on the ground, face-to-face aspect of our validation methodology. There's also been a lot of lessons learned from this process as well. Like I mentioned before, we did have and have going on currently some virtual validations. We noticed some things, good and bad, along the process, and those will be taken into consideration moving forward. I want to also emphasize that Ctpat still has that P in the acronym, which is partnership. So this is a learning and experience for all involved, government and partners. And we do really want to learn what the industry has out there as toys and good gadgets, so to speak, of us trying to exchange that vital evidence of implementation and information that is needed for successful validation. There is a risk-based approach, SOP, internally that we're developing as well to make sure that the candidates for a virtual validation in the future are recognized and that it's a low-risk-based operation. This is not a one-size-fits-all. Not everyone will be eligible for a virtual validation, so risk is a good or necessary tool to look at ensuring that we actually are doing the right type of validation for the companies at hand. And with that said, Pete, that's all I have for now. Obviously, I welcome the questions at the end of this. I know I just threw a lot of information out at you. I also want to mention to everybody, thank you for joining. Be safe, be healthy, make wise choices, and hopefully we will see each other in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Art Isaacson. Great stuff. Again, don't forget to submit your chat Q&A questions throughout the panel. We'll get to as many as we can following its conclusion at the end of the presentations. Moving us down the home stretch is Trade Compliance Branch Chief Carmen Perez, who's here to outline the Ctpat program's current trade compliance efforts, provide a progress report, and give us a snapshot of Ctpat's partnership with the University of Houston. Ms. Perez started with CBP in 2007 and has demonstrated a keen understanding of the trade environment, its opportunities, as well as its challenges, and has gained valuable experience serving as a special advisor to both the Commissioner of CBP and the Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, with whom she worked to form a response strategy to the unaccompanied minor crisis, including assisting in the developmental plans for women and children's centers. Branch Chief Perez, great to have you here today. Can you please tell us what we should know about the ISA's program's transition into trade compliance and about Ctpat's partnership with the University of Houston?
Well, first of all, Pete, I feel like you gave everyone a much nicer and longer introduction, but I'm going to let that go. And second of all, it's so nice to see everyone, even though I can't see anyone. So I'm sure you're all looking beautiful in your best dressed fleece pajamas and button-up shirts. I know this has been a crazy time that we've been living in, so I hope everyone is doing well. Ctpat has been a new change for me given my history and all over OFO, and I was once a trade relations personnel under the expert tutelage of Felicia Felder, so this is fun to be a part of this again. So thank you for having us again, Trade Relations. I'm going to talk to you all quickly and basically just touch base on some of the other things that the director mentioned earlier in his opening remarks on some of the things that we've been doing with the Trusted Trader program. One of the things, just as background, because we do only have about 315 members in the Trusted Trader program, is just a little bit of history. This all began early in 2014 based on a Federal Register notice with us having to incorporate the Trusted Trader program and ISA, the Importer Self-Assessment Program, into Ctpat. And this would be so that we could develop our AEO program, which would then have the security side, Ctpat security, and then Ctpat trade compliance, which was the end result. So in this time, we've been doing a lot of things to get us from point A to point B, which have consisted of everything from working with a pilot group that help us come up with things such as new benefits. And then the moneymaker was developing an automated process and taking the importer self-assessment program into our lovely Ctpat trade compliance program, but all automated. With this automation, there's now a connectivity between the Ctpat portal and our new trade compliance program. That, to me, has been a baby and a up and down emotional roller coaster. Not that I'm altogether stable, so I don't need a lot of help having emotional roller coasters, but this one was a hard one, because developing any process when you have to do automation from paperwork is quite something. And when you have a program that has already been established and that the trade really loves and relies on, we have to make sure that it's beneficial and that the trade can really adapt to. So we did a lot of work with our COAC members, with our pilot participants, and then we used a lot of our internal staff to make sure that we were building a program that was very useful and that was very easy on a singular platform for the trade to use to get into Ctpat trade compliance. We began that launch of the portal in March of this year, this fiscal year 20. And right now we're in the transition phase of bringing in, or grandfathering in, like we like to call it, all of our current 315 members into this automated process. Now, with this automated process, it's become a little bit of a challenge because you have to bring in all of your information, and basically it feels like you're starting again with a quote-unquote application. It's not an application, but we're trying to say it's a profile process, because you do have to put in all your information from the beginning. There's drawers and drawers of paperwork in front of my desk right now of everybody's information. And now we need to see that, automation is the way. And we're doing this specifically because the end result of what we're trying to do is eventually get information sharing between not only other PGAs, but other CBP offices, other systems such as ACE and ATS when those times are necessary. So step one was really making this automated. And the second step would be to eventually look at doing any international MRA or again, PGA engagement. So we're in the middle of completing this phase of bringing in all 315 members, and the goal is to have everybody incorporated into this by the end of the fiscal year. So it's been a great process, and I have to really thank the trade for their engagement and for their feedback. And nothing happens in a day, or in this case 2 years with trying to build something. We are the government, and so it takes a little bit, and we have to keep trying. And if at first you don't succeed, I go in a corner and I cry, and then go to happy hour, and then I try again. So we did it, and I appreciate all the help. We plan on taking new applicants probably by the end of the calendar year. We had to do everything in phases. But now the goal is to get as many compliance members as we can, because we know the importance of compliance, especially with building this AEO program and matching the other programs that we have across the countries. And when we go to the WCO, you see that everybody started off with their compliance programs, and we started off with a top-notch security program. So now we have this beautiful developed compliance program that we've turned around into Ctpat trade compliance. And now we want to bring that AEO program, and we want to share it with the WCO and with other countries, and see how we can streamline the process and figure out reciprocity in any of the benefits. So that's the next process we're looking for. And in that, we're looking to take new applicants, and we're looking for any adjustments that companies want to make. And like the director said early on, a lot of this has changed and a lot of goals have needed to be adjusted because of what's happening with COVID. While our process is different from what happens with the validations and things of that nature with the security side, there's still a lot of engagement that we need to do with each company. And on the compliance side, it's a lot of, looking at the books and figuring out how we can look at the compliance in the sense of value and classification and things of that nature. So everybody in the trade world right now that's a part of compliance, they have needed to, of course, adjust the way that they do business. So that's put a little bit of a halt on our timeline, but we are here, we're working with the trade, and we're hoping that by the end of the calendar year and early calendar year 2021, we can keep moving with the process. Next part of this building of the trade compliance program with the Ctpat trade compliance program that the director touched on a little bit early in his remarks is the incorporation of the forced labor program. Now, we all know that we have heard, and I don't know how many of you have attended other Ctpat conferences. I don't know, if you've heard me speak at all or heard the director speak at all, but we've been very much forthcoming with the fact that we're going to start incorporating forced labor into the criteria of what we're looking for Ctpat. And as mentioned, it's going to be a should in the MSC, and it has been laid out as a should. But if you are a trade compliance member, it's going to be a criteria, and we are looking to incorporate it in the yearly annual notification process and the information provided so that we know that you're remaining compliant. It has been a bit of a tricky process because we have to really determine what that information means and if it's feasible for the company to provide. We understand what social compliance as it pertains to forced labor and child labor, that can mean a lot of things when you give us that information, and that could an audit report and a risk assessment and a remediation plan, that can be very, very vast, and it could be a ton of information. And we want that information, but we want to make sure that we're getting it for the right purposes. And we want to make sure that when we have that information, it also is being given to the other CBP offices for the right person, for purposes, so that we're helping being that liaison that we have promised to be as we are doing for the partnership program. So, example, if there is something, and I don't know how many of you all heard the forced labor conversation earlier at 1 o'clock, if there's something as far as a withhold release order or something of that nature, we have been looking at options as far as a benefit of assisting with sharing that information with the forced labor division, or using the partnership with your national account manager, or with even your supply chain security specialist, with taking that information that we're requesting and using that information to assist with helping you get through whatever is going on with that withhold release order, or even if it means you having a sit-down meeting with the director or yours truly. It all depends. But we understand that this level of information it's hard to obtain, and it does add a certain additional level of compliance. And the goal is never to kick a company out should there be a kink, if you will, in your supply chain security, especially when it comes to what we're trying to do with combating forced labor. In this program, in this particular situation, we want to gain as much information that we can so we can honestly and truly combat the issue. We want to know where the sourcing is happening, where we can do mapping, what manufacturers or commodities may be tied to it. So we're really going to rely on the partnership, which is really going to include us asking the right questions so that we can include that into the annual notification process. So in doing so, to get those right criteria, we have been working a lot with the COAC. We have our Trusted Trader COAC program. We have had conversations constantly with our forced labor division. We work a lot with the Centers of Excellence and Expertise, since they deal immediately when there's a withhold release order. They deal with the companies and the imports upon arrival. So we're hoping to get this done. It's a part of our performance plan for the end of the fiscal year. This is something that, as each speaking engagement has come by, that it's becoming more and more serious and a reality. And I cannot stress it enough. And with each speaking engagement I have in conversation, I know sometimes people feel like it's a taboo, or I'm a little mean or strict with it, but I'll take that one because it's going to happen, and we're going to be the first to really enforce it and be that enforcer on behalf of the Forced Labor Division and on behalf of the rest of CBP. You won't see us looking for forced labor when an SESS goes out to do a validation, or when an account manager goes and has the conversation with you. But be assured that we are going to be looking for this in your paperwork. And if there are egregious violations, no, there is not going to be any leniency. There are not going to be reduced penalties. There are not going to be the same Ctpat benefits or trade compliance benefits that you are used to seeing, because we are doing everything within our power to help combat and mitigate this process. So forced labor is a huge thing and a part of Ctpat trade compliance. So next, I'm going to just get into a little bit more about the collaboration that we're continuing to do with our COAC members and with all really industry. And we're doing that from everything from looking at certain things like penalty mitigations. We're looking at it with, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the iTrack data, and everything from that to reduced rate of exams. What we've done is really, we do a constant, and unfortunately due to COVID, we haven't been able to have our annual meeting, but we like to get a bunch of people in the room, and especially industry members that we use with the COAC, just kind of have a 2 to 2.5 day brainstorming session on what we're seeing as far as benefits and what they're working. And we do it twofold. We look at how is it benefiting the trade, and then how is it working for Ctpat? Are we delivering the goods? Are we actually able to say with a smile on our face that we are helping the trade and delivering that, especially from a compliance side? We deal with tier 2 and tier 3 members nonstop. So we want to make sure for that level of partnership that we are giving the correct benefits. So we never stop having the conversation on benefits, and we never stop doing. Oops. Can you still hear me, Pete?
Yes, loud and clear. You sound great.
Okay, great. I hit a button and it said something about a smartphone. So I'm not using a smartphone, so it kind of scared me. Anyway, so we want to make sure that we always continue to look at benefits, and we're always soliciting for benefits. And we're looking to do that more and have kind of an intake box that we're looking at doing. We have put on our website, we have frequently asked questions that you can actually take a look at when it comes to the Ctpat Trade Compliance Program. If you want to take a look at the website later to see what we're working with. And then soon enough, you'll see the application process too. And with that, and in the handbook that's coming out, you'll see the list of benefits and descriptions that we're currently working on. But I encourage everyone to work and talk to trade relations if you're looking to be a part of COAC to help give those ideas. And, you don't have to talk to me. You can always talk to Mark because Mark likes to talk to people, or you can always talk to Pete because Pete likes to talk to people, but they love to hear ideas about benefits also. And yeah, you can talk to me. But we want to make sure that with the level of partnership you're giving us, that we are also giving back something that can be beneficial to your program and to your company. And lastly, I will just close out on that same note and with a segue to what we're doing with the University of Houston study. So a long time ago, I know everybody, or at least if you're familiar somewhat with the Ctpat program, or if you are a Ctpat member, I know that everyone is familiar with the University of Virginia study that we did, basically giving numbers and giving the feedback on what you're saving and reduced rate of exams and a couple of different metrics. Right now, what we have decided to do, and it took us a little bit of time to get there, but we think that we have found the great combination of people, and thanks to the University of Houston and DHS, what they're doing is they're helping us take another holistic look at the program to see how the program is operating and see how, again, these benefits are looking and how really the engagement between Ctpat and the trade, how it's all working and how it's meshing together, if you will. There will be a survey coming out in the next few weeks to a month, and we'll be sending out email blasts to everyone in the Ctpat portal. You will be getting an email with a unique link. I encourage everyone to fill out that survey. The responses do not come back to CBP or Ctpat, so I will not be hurt. My feelings will not be hurt. I don't know about Mr. Garza, but my feelings won't be hurt. And that information will go specifically to the University of Houston, and they will sit there and they will go through everything, and they'll come up with a product that we can get back to everyone with the metrics that we've been looking for and some of the feedback on how the program is running and how that information that the trade looks for, how we can actually get that back to you in a readable format, if you will, and we'll be able to publish that on our website. It will be at least another 8 to 12 months out, the responses, but they've also had conversations internally with some of our other offices and specialists. So I know that's a constant question that we get at speaking engagements also. How much is the trade saving? What benefits are working and things like that. So I do want everyone to know that this is something that we're not just putting on the back burner and relying on old information or old metrics. We are still looking into it because it's important to us to make sure that the program stays relevant, especially with the incorporation of Ctpat trade compliance and the changes from the minimum security criteria. We have to make sure that we remain relevant and everything is actually of use to you. A lot of my work is all with the industry, so it's my job to make sure everyone is happy or at least appears to be, so that I look good to my boss and, I can go home with a smile on my face. So with that, Pete, I will turn it back to you, and I look forward to any questions. And thank you for your time. And again, thanks to Trade Relations.
Excellent. Thanks a million, Branch Chief Perez. And I'll make sure you get lots of questions because you want to talk to everybody is what I got as the takeaway from that presentation.
Yeah.
Very, very, really
Clearly
appreciate it. And I thought I talked you up pretty good, but you're incredible. You know that. So real quick, I was looking at the chat. I just want to mention there was some questions about extensions on the security profiles. As Carlos Ochoa pointed out, your best resource is to reach out to your supply chain security specialist if you have specific questions about your security profiles and timeframes, and if you need some assistance during this time. So that, and as well as there were some questions on metrics regarding Ctpat, kind of return on investment type things for non-Ctpat versus Ctpat. I think a lot of that will also be answered by Branch Chief Perez in her talk about the University of Houston study that's upcoming. So please stay tuned for that. Fill out the survey, get engaged, be a part of that. With that being said, I'd like to pass the microphone back to Director Garza now for his final thoughts and closing remarks. Just a reminder to please stay tuned afterwards for the Q&A session that will follow these remarks. Director Garza, over to you.
All right, Pete, thank you so much. To everybody, to Carlos and Mark and Carmen, and to you, Pete, thank you guys very much. It means a lot to have others within the organization speak instead of everybody just listening to me, because I don't think everybody just wants to hear me talk. I think it's important for our subject matter experts to do some of the talking and to get the points out there that need to be addressed, from the minimum security criteria to forced labor to our University of Houston study, virtual validations, where we're headed with the program, all key things that are really, really important to the current state of the program as we are today. I really want everybody, I have seen we've got well over 100 questions that have come online. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody that's on the line still listening to us. We'll try to go through some of these questions as best we can. And for those that we don't get to, one thing that I am committing to, and so that everybody is aware, we're going to try to, we won't get to all the questions, but we will definitely take the questions and we're going to consolidate a bunch of them, and we're going to put together a FAQs that we're going to post on the CBP website, cbp.gov/Ctpat, and we're gonna post that there. And so if your question's not answered, don't get mad. We will try to respond to it. It may not be in a day or two, but we will work on getting something posted with responses. Probably in a general sense, we'll try to keep it, most of the questions consolidated. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a whole bunch of questions from the training event that we did down in with Mexico with Cluster. So we're going to really try to consolidate a lot of those questions that have come out. But again, thank you very much, Val and her team. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. And I think we've got an e-commerce panel coming up tomorrow with Executive Director Thomas Overacker, my boss, who will be handling that panel as the moderator. So make sure you guys tune into that. So with that, thank you very much. And Pete, let's take on some of these questions.
That's good, Director Garza. Well, we got you warmed up and I got you here. I might as well throw one your way. Here's the question. As global AEOs adapt to the COVID and post-COVID environment, many will develop virtual validation procedures. How will Ctpat address this in the context of its MRAs? And I should say, I guess Mark may be on cue as well, having been dealt with the virtual validation project. So thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks, Pete. We definitely are working already with the WCO in the virtual validation. There's been a lot of discussion from the WCO folks on how to implement virtual validations. What are we looking for? What do they need to do? How should we be basing the validations? And I'll tell you, my key thing for virtual validations is going to be based on risk. Mark mentioned it. We've got low risk companies that will do, and potentially some medium risk. We're absolutely not going to be doing any high risk virtual validations, and that's pretty much the stance that the WCO is going to take, along with a bunch of the members that are going to participate in these types of validations, these virtual validations. So with our 12 partners, we're going to start the work in efforts of getting our minimum security criteria lined up. Virtual validations as they're happening, Ctpat will accept them from a foreign country that we have an MRA with, and MRA countries are going to accept our virtual validations as well. That's the plan moving forward. Again, it's really about this pandemic and how we're doing it. But I think in the future, as we start looking to when we are able to start traveling again and doing our boots on the ground validations, we will be open to providing virtual validations as somewhat of a benefit to our most trusted partners, our tier 3 members that have shown really good compliance with Ctpat. And I think that will be a really good benefit to have down the road.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so this one was, I'm going to combine a couple of questions, also for you, Director Garza. The question was, how many of those 11,400 members are Tier 3? And the second part of that, is there going to be a Tier 4 level? And if so, what benefits would be given to importers and carriers who meet that Tier 4?
All right, so I can tell you, I think we have 361 Tier 3 members, if I remember correctly. Tier 4, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I think everybody what does Tier 4 mean? But no, I don't have any plans for Tier 4, not yet, anyways. But we have been in discussion with different associations on potentially creating Tier 3 level for other entities other than importers. So that is something that we are in discussion, with associations, as well as leadership here at CBP on a potential path forward for other entities within Ctpat.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And I'll stay in order and pass it off to Branch Chief Ochoa. This next question regarding CBP or Ctpat placing more training materials for both domestic and foreign entities on the CBP portal, in addition to the current resources. Is there more that's coming regarding the new MSC with that will be placed in the portal? And if so, what's there right now?
Thank you, Pete. We have actually developed quite a lot of training and outreach material and that's located in the portal. We have PowerPoint presentations with speaker notes on issues that address pest contamination and money laundering. We have been issuing Ctpat bulletins on topics such as the code of conduct and the proper use of passwords and passphrases. We have also posted informational documents developed by partner government agencies, international organizations, and entities in the private sector on issues or topics specific to the updated MSC requirements. So, for instance, you have tips for small businesses from the FCC, TSA's owner-operator security guidelines. We have FEMA's business continuity plan, which basically addresses criterion 2.4. We have a really good document called The Case for Vetting Global Business Partners. That was developed by Deloitte. Something new that we have done is to post upload videos to the CBP YouTube channel on cybersecurity issues. And we have a supply chain security specialist from our Newark office that has put together these PowerPoint presentation videos. One is on authentication and passwords, requirement 4.2, and the other one is on cybersecurity requirement 4.8. We will be uploading additional videos on the CBP YouTube channel in coming months. You need to go into YouTube, the CBP channel, and then look for the Ctpat videos and webinars. The final point that I'd like to make is that we are developing an MSC for foreign suppliers. My understanding from the manager in headquarters who is handling this is that the document is finalized. I think we want to share it with a couple of more folks in the private sector and then send it to Director Garza for his approval. And that will be an additional document, an additional resource that companies will have as they update the new MSC.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and send this one over to Director Mark Isaacson. The question is, we are due for our validation in 2021. Will we be given advance notice of virtual validations? If so, how much time in advance?
Hey, Pete, thanks for the question. When it comes down to the virtual validations, obviously we don't have all the answers that will really go into, let's say, an internal SOP and an external SOP for the trade. However, just like any part of the validation process, the relationship that you have with your SCSS is vital. There will obviously be a lot of communication, a lot of correspondence going back and forth to set up any type of validation, whatever the options may be at that time. So we want to make that clear that, with everything that you have as a protocol in Ctpat, it always comes with always advance notice and as much lead time as possible. And I also mentioned the partnership aspect of this program. This has always been and will maintain a relationship that is a partner-based, one-on-one type of collaboration, meaning that when supply chains are discussed and information is exchanged, that everybody has an equal part in this process as well. So one thing I will do is I'll give you a little bit of insight. Let's just say virtual validations are going to happen. The SCSS would really kind of go about their business, and you would go about your business the exact same way. The only thing that would change would be the virtual validation experience itself, meaning the site visit. Everything leading up to it, everything after it will always remain the same. There should be little to hardly any type of deviation from that process. Just like anything internal, when it comes down to SCSS is getting approval to validate supply chains, whether it's virtual, whether it's on-site, they need the approval from their supervisors. They need to explain the risk-based approach or the type of information that was exchanged with the partner to establish where this validation visit is going to take them. So again, there will be a lot of advanced notification regardless of the type of validation that's being performed. I can assure you that.
Excellent, Mark. Thank you so much. This next one I'll pass over to Branch Chief Perez. Carmen, the question is, how can I join the trade compliance program if I am currently a Ctpat security member?
Can you hear me? No?
Sounds good.
You can hear me? Oh.
Yep.
Well, why didn't you say that, Pete? Come on, guys. I did really good for the first half. Say that again, Alex, for 500.
It's a daily dose. So how can I join this trade compliance program if I am currently a Ctpat security member, importer, for example?
Oh, okay. Yes. So as I was saying, in the beginning of the year, what we're hoping to is have everything completed to take on new members. So we're going to have it set up where the portal will select all the Tier 2 and Tier 3 members that are eligible to join the program. And it will basically have the link right there in the security side of the portal. And you click the link, and you'll have to fill out all of the application process and the eligibility questions. Now, the pre-eligibility questions that will allow you to even see that link are, of course, have you been in the Ctpat program? Have you had 2 years of importing under that IOR number? And are you a U.S. or Canadian resident? So if you have that on the front end, the system will already be able to identify you, and then you'll be able to go in and start the eligibility questions. There are 19 eligibility questions, and then you'll be able to move forward with the application. However, we're not looking to do that till probably the beginning of the the calendar year of 2021. We will be releasing the handbook at the end of the month, so you'll be able to see it on the ctpat.gov, cbp.gov/ctpat. I'll make sure we send that out to you. I'll give it to Trade Relations. The proper web link. We'll be able to send that out, and everybody will be able to see the handbook. We're looking to release that at the beginning of the month, so everybody can start taking a look at that and get the right information together.
Okay, thank you, Branch Chief Perez. Just so everybody knows, we are collecting the questions that are being sent in. We may not get to all of them today. We will provide an FAQ on what we received. This one will go back to Director Garza because he loves to answer questions, especially mine. What advice can you provide to the companies who usually visit their manufacturers annually but have not been able to do so due to COVID? Also, what about qualifying new manufacturers? They obviously can't visit them in person, so what can they do?
So, I think the first step of Ctpat is your, risk assessment. As a company, you've got to be able to do your own risk assessment and that of your business partners. So I think companies are struggling with, how am I doing a virtual risk assessment of my partners? And it's the same way that we are struggling with, identifying, our membership, which ones are low risk, medium risk, and high risk. It's a step-by-step process. We have to identify, we got a team together. They came up with, it's not just my answer or just Pete's answer. It's a team answer. And I think that's the approach that you've got to do with new business partners. You've maybe look to associations. We work very closely with the SCAN Association, and I know they have different ways of doing their audits. They're doing virtual audits. We're working really closely with BASC, and they're doing virtual audits as well of companies. And I think by becoming, associated with companies or associations that do those kinds of things can really help you in your search for, business partners out there.
Excellent, sir. Thank you. This next one will go to Branch Chief Ochoa, and it relates to the new MSC. And maybe one of the questions was, well, I'll give you this one first, Carlos. So are companies now required to have security technology in place, such as intrusion alarms and video cameras?
No, not necessarily. The use of this type of technology, it kicks in, the requirements kick in if you're using this type of technology to justify your physical security, right? So we know that this technology is being widely used all over the world. The prices have come down dramatically over the last 2 decades. And we can tell you from experience that the last thing you want to have is technology that does not work because it has not been tested or inspected, and it is in fact malfunctioning and giving the facility a false sense of security. So once again, the security technology requirements kick into place only if the company uses this type of technology to secure its facilities. And of the 10 criteria that we have in that deal with security technology, 6 are shoulds or recommendations, and 4 are musts or requirements. So this means that even if the company relies on security technology, the company may choose not to implement over half of the security technology criteria that we currently have in place.
Thank you, Carlos. And the second part of that question is, today's shoulds, today's musts, should we expect those shoulds to turn into musts in the future? And maybe those musts become, more than that? Is there some sort of progression in Ctpat's plan for the minimum security criteria that you can share?
No, not necessarily. I know that for the training category, we did change from a should. If you recall, training was a should previously. It is now a must because we finally recognize the importance of people, right? People are your biggest assets, but they can also be your biggest headaches. And that's when we can start talking about internal conspiracies and so forth. I think that more than must and shoulds, I think the future updates to the MSC are going to be on criteria categories such as cybersecurity. Once artificial intelligence is used more widely, we're talking about driverless vehicles, maybe the way networks are secure, the role of the cloud in securing personal identifiable information, right? Which needs to be protected to protect the consumer, to protect the data that flows across cyberspace. So whatever we do, for sure, we're going to be, one, consulting with the trade to make sure that it's viable, to make sure that it's within the means of a small and medium-sized enterprise. And second, it has to make sense, right? It has to add to supply chain security. There is no point in adding requirements or changing a requirement from a should to a must if it's not really going to lead to additional security in the supply chain. So that's pretty much how I see it, Pete.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Just to let you know, we have about 5 to 6 minutes left. So I want to get a couple more questions in. Director Atkinson, this one is coming your way, and it's probably very appropriate given the on-the-fly measures you had to take to get connected today. But what have been your biggest challenges during your virtual validation test that's been going on since the COVID pandemic hit?
Ooh, biggest challenges. Well, going over some of the virtual validations that have been conducted and talking over the process with the FCSS and their points of contact. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges is when you're trying to validate companies that are on the other side of the globe. When you're virtually validating, somebody's going to have to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? Who's it going to be? So the challenges, are, do we accept other types of evidence of implementation? Do we look at, let's say, perhaps video recordings of certain facilities that are halfway around the world? And also, some of these countries, and I'm experiencing it right now, have bandwidth issues. So, is it feasible to have these types of validations in other areas? Let's say that we said, okay, let's do a virtual validation and everything was set up. But the day of the show, everything kind of goes right down the drain and we can't get any connectivity. So you always got to consider other options. You got to be open. Companies can share the type of technologies that they may have. We also know that in certain validation environments, there are certain, let's say, employees that have offices in certain areas of the world that may have the ability to get that information quicker, since maybe in the general region. So, there's a lot of things to consider when it comes down to, the virtual validations. When you're talking about brokers and highway carriers, northern and southern border, you're dealing primarily within your own time zone and maybe a 3-hour gap if the worst case scenario happens. So those are the types of challenges, but we do want to work with the companies, obviously, to find out what they have. So one of the good things that are coming out of these validations is that we're learning a lot of the technology that these companies actually have and how we can use that to our advantage during the validation. That's also a key thing that we need to look at. So the lessons learned are good and bad, obviously. And moving forward, we're going to notate that. And then, just like anything when it comes down to best practices, there may be best practices when it comes down to this type of evidence of implementation sharing. So we're going to keep our eyes open. We're going to, ask our partners for information on the types of toys that they have when it comes down to virtual formats, because we know during this time that they are conducting their own types of meetings and assessments internally as well. So that's another lessons learned too. So, it's a good thing. We're doing very well with this, and we're very excited moving forward to see what the industry has in store.
Thanks, Mark. Great points. The last question I want to get in is going to go over to Branch Chief Perez. Regarding her presentation, there was a question about if issues are found in a Ctpat validation they will result in some sort of enforcement on CBP laws to the fullest extent, Carmen, and there would be no mitigation or relief. Just wanted to clarify if that was the case or if that was what you're trying to convey in your presentation earlier.
I'm assuming that is regarding forced labor.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So, no, absolutely. If there are issues or any sort of penalties or anything of this sort found as it pertains to forced labor, we have given the instruction that even if you're part of the Ctpat program or the Ctpat trade compliance program, that you will not be singled out because of that you will fall under any other WRO or any other research or export or anything of that cause because of the nature of the egregious violation. Boom, drop the hammer.
I appreciate that clarification. Very good. I think that brings us just about to the end of this session. I want to thank all the panelists and thank everybody for attending today virtually. Unfortunately, we can't see you, right? We can imagine what you look like, but it will be nice to get back to a time when we can see everybody and do this type of thing in person. But on behalf of Director Garza, Branch Chiefs Ochoa and Perez, Director Isaacson and myself, I want to thank you again for your time and attention today. For more information on Ctpat, please feel free to visit cbp.gov/Ctpat. And please stay safe out there, and all the best to everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
Have a good